So cool topic for today. I feel like Brandon, this was um just kind of one of your ideas. You were talking about, at least this is what I remember. You were talking about like kind of like a dream casting for like your dream adaptation of like a video game into a movie or a book into a movie or something like that. And that's such a cool idea. And we talked a little bit more
Yeah.
recently, I think all three of us about like just kind of exploring that. So no, I think we talked a little bit about like favorite or like awesome casting stuff like that, and we've mentioned some adaptations we really like. But like, what are some of your very top favorite overall adaptations, one way or another? And I'll just throw out a few. So like the BioShock games are great. I loved the book. Like I thought that the book did things it focused on things I loved about the games, but it did it more so and gave more attention to that. So it's like, you know, I'd almost be like, if you want to know the best thing about the series is like, hey, go check out that book and just like start there almost for someone who may not even play games and just be like, it's super interesting and it's got some really cool ideas that are in the game. But it puts them just into that book format. Also, the movie Annihilation. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but it's like that weird sci-fi movie with Natalie Portman. Um, that is one of my favorite books ever. Um, and I love the movie too, even though it's not one to one. Like, and what's something's cool about the director of that, he said he wasn't trying to make just adapt the book into a movie. He wanted it to feel like you felt like you were reading the book, which was like almost like this dream-like state. Like everything seemed really distorted, almost like intoxicated. And as you're reading it, you're like, it almost felt like magic. It's like giving you this really weird vibe. Um, and just a fun example of that is like in the book at one point, this character looks at the structure that goes underground and they share with the group, they go, I just need to let everybody know I'm looking at that structure that goes down as a tower. And all the character and like that's such a weird thing to me. They're like, but the reason like, and you're trying to figure out like, what does that mean? Why did they share that? Why are they thinking of it that way? And then you start getting this vibe of like, wow, okay, something is like really distorting their thoughts and they're thinking about things in a way that's not normal. Like they're vocalizing that. But like it took me like reading that book like three times to realize that. But I loved that even that dialogue I just shared was in there because it made it so weird. Like I was like, what? Wait, why? Like that's such a weird thing. Like just imagine us walking and you're like, guys, I just need to let you know, like, I think cheeseburgers have wings. And just being like, okay, cool, got it. And just being like, what is going on to make that person say that? But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to share like the movie did that for me. It still made you have those weird vibes and not really understanding it, just being confused and having to think about it. So anyway, those are a couple of mine.
Um, I think one of my favorites, and it's more recent, Fallout. The Fallout
Oh,
show
yeah.
did such a good job at not feeling like it needed to follow any familiar story, but still gave you a very familiar world to walk around in, and like I don't know, it seemed like it could have been the story of like Fallout 5, and or the beginning of the story for Fallout 5 or whatever. Um, with just how you've got this fresh vault dweller going out into the wastes and surviving on naivety, and just it was just so no, I thought it was so good, and it brought that series back to life for me. So I've always loved those games. And I say always by like 3 New Vegas and 4 are the only ones and not not counting 76 so much, but I just felt like what I was familiar with Fallout, that show, it did it so well, and I was really, really, really happy with it. Um, Other than that, like ones that no, some of my favorites. I mean, the Harry Potter. I mean, just seeing Harry Potter, the first one in the theaters as a kid, like, and being such a fan of those books. I don't know. I loved it so much, and I still like it's still one of my favorite movies of all time just because of that. And showing it to my daughter here recently, and her growing on her and her liking it is just such a special thing that like I think that will always be one of my top favorites.
Outside of the ones we've already mentioned, I think uh, Fallout was on my mind as well. Um, I don't necessarily outside of like for it outside of Walton Goggins. Like I don't know that. Like I think his casting was great. I'm not as much sold on all the other ones, but like the world and everything that they build around it made me kind of forget about any concerns I had there. Um, Another one that's more recent for me in the last 2 or 3 years has been there's a Deadpool samurai manga adaptation that's like I think it's like really good, mainly because just that type of character lends itself so well uh, to manga and anime, where it makes me want to actually see an anime adaptation of it. There was some I think back in like the mid 2000s there were a few X-Men anime adaptations that were really good, and I just want to see more of that.
Yeah. Fallout, going back to Fallout, that's a really good call out. We love this show. I've never been a huge fan of the games, and I know that's like sacrilegious. And it's not that I think they're bad games or anything. It's just I just had a hard time connecting with it. It might have been the whole Baldur's Gate type of overwhelming like investment and systems and trying to figure out like how all this works and how you play this game. I think that's probably a big part of it for me. But the show was so good that like I think it's like a profoundly good adaptation in the sense that it it's gonna make the series better as a whole. It's gonna make like to me, I foresee that it's gonna make the games push harder to achieve that same level of like storytelling and character, visuals, like, and now they can spend not that they weren't spending the money on that already to make the games great, but now they can go like, oh, we've got all these new fans, we can really put some additional budget behind XYZ, whether it's getting new additional great actors in the series or pushing the visuals up a notch or whatever it is that would be hopefully positive is something we see in the shows to where I'm like, oh, you know what, this reminded me that is really cool that the games do that and not any really other game does that. And like this series actually has some really unique lore. It's not just some general post-apocalyptic Mad Max generic world that I was maybe thinking of it. I was like, okay, I could really, turn that. Now I have an interest in going and turning that on and looking at it in a way that I didn't before. But then also being okay going, you know what, even if I don't ever connect with the games, like this is now a series that like I have some passion for. Maybe not as much as some of these other games and stuff that I'm into, but I was like, okay, this is cool. I can say like I'm really into Fallout as a property. Like they won me over after these games had been out like 15, 20 years or whatever it is. Like never really won me over. And then the show comes out and it's like, oh, this is a really cool universe, like with some really cool ideas and stuff. So that I gotta applaud them for accomplishing that, with the
That's
show.
awesome.
I'm with you on hoping that that builds some positive growth for them, but I am a little skeptical on that just because of the release window of everything. Because it seemed
Mhm.
that I think Fallout 76 has got a little more love since that came out, just from some of the content they've added and have planned down their pipeline. But it the part that makes me skeptical is that that show kind of created like a demand for more Fallout stuff.
Mm,
And with Bethesda's release window, it's like Starfield just came out, and they're still working on. There's a DLC that, I mean, at the time of the show came out, Starfield hadn't been out very long, I don't think, and they've just recently released DLC for it. They've still got other updates planned.
Elder Scrolls
Elder
6 is
Elder
on the
Scrolls.
horizon.
Well, is it on the horizon in the sense
Maybe.
of like time wise? Like they
They released a fucking trailer of a fly through of a plane for
that
of the planescape for whatever fucking reason. Like,
I
was
don't.
that 10 years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least 7 or 8. It's not so much that it's not on the horizon. I just don't know if the sun has yet broke the horizon yet. Like it's still rising. Like based on stuff I've seen and heard, it's like we still might be 3 or 4 years away from it.
We'll get
And
Skyrim 3 more different ways before we get it.
so
If they
then,
can find another way to give it to us.
yeah. So that leads to like Fallout. It's like because the same teams work on those games. I think the 76 team might be a little more separate, but as far as like the mainline games, um, I'm pretty sure it's the same team that works on that. So like if we're 3 or 4 years away from the next Elder Scrolls, then we're probably at least 5 or 6 years after that away from the next mainline Fallout. I think their best bet to build more was like to release like remastered versions of 3 or New Vegas, something along those lines. And
A lot of people could do that.
I mean, a lot of people
There's
have
a
been
lot of
asking for it, and I think it's been rumored that that they're at least working on one of those. Uh, it's like a weird situation because before Microsoft purchased Obsidian, it was like, well, New Vegas was worked on by a different team, but now that Obsidian's in house, I don't know, and so now Bethesda and Obsidian are owned by the same company, and I don't know how much crossover there is there, to where Obsidian would want to work on another one, or they would be okay with just releasing a remaster. But
or just do like the route, like, where they just work on a new Fallout in general. Like that other, they work on the next one. They're the ones that work on the next one rather than just like Bethesda.
yeah,
If
but they've got their own properties they're trying to establish with Outer Worlds
Outer Wilds.
was good, and so we're
Yeah.
still a year or two away at least from the second one there. Avowed is coming out in a few months, which I'm excited for, and I hope it's good because like those two franchises are like almost like the mirror of Bethesda in the sense of like Avowed is essentially the equivalent of what Elder Scrolls is, and Outer Worlds is almost like a mirror to what Fallout is, even though it's in space. But I think those two franchises kind of fulfill the same fulfill the same goals. So yeah, I'm hoping it leads to more and better Fallout stuff. But they just recently had a Fallout Day, and so they'd put up like this like long countdown and everything down to it. So people are expecting some kind of news, and then it ended up just being a few DLC items for 76 that we already knew about. So it wasn't really anything new. So that was a big letdown. And I like 76. I'm probably one of the few that actually do like it. It's just I don't like the online aspect of it because it just the same reason that I'm not as fond of other battle passes and stuff where it just creates that or it just works on that FOMO stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, when the Fallout show was coming out, like I was like, okay, so like, am I going to care about this? Am I going to enjoy it without having played the games? And they showed me that, yeah, you will, which I thought was really cool. And stuff too, like the realizing that they had like a universe with like the creature designs and stuff. and going, okay, those are like specific things that like there's a real lore to this and stuff. So like for me, like talking about talking about adaptations, I think it's exciting for me to go like, hey, maybe there will be like a really high quality linear experience where I can just enjoy it for 10 to 20 hours and it plays like an Uncharted or something, right? But it's in that universe and I can enjoy it more without necessarily having to go and play this giant 200-hour game where maybe I'm not into all the quirks and the systems and stuff. Like that's the exciting part about adaptations. It can also be really, really annoying when it's soulless or not executed well, right? And I feel like that happens a lot, obviously, like we talked about that. But then other times it happens and it's like, oh, you get Arcane on Netflix, which to me is like one of the best. Um, not like I don't know how well it does as an adaptation. I've heard it does well, but to me, it's one of the best animated productions like ever. Like to me, it's up there with just like this is such a good story. The animation's so good, the art is so good. Like I don't care if I even like where it came from or not. Like this is excellent as a piece of like cinema or whatever you want to call it. Um, so anyway, I'm excited for the I get excited for the people who created these franchises and stuff when something does do well and so something I can get into. Even knowing I may not ever be into the original thing it came from. I think that's cool too, to go like, oh yeah, I love the show. Not really into the games, but I love the show. Like, I think that's cool when people say that about something I enjoy. Like, you know, hey, don't really like the game, but I like the movie a lot. You know, if the if the movie's good, you know, otherwise it's like, what's wrong with you? You know, how can you like that? But real quick, a couple honorable mentions from Miss Killigan. Harley Quinn story. Let's see here. Is that a comic book or is that an animated series?
She's
Okay,
talk
she's a
she's
comic series.
yeah. Yeah, she's talking
I've
about a
heard good
comic
things
series,
about
like
this.
I think it's specifically a Poison Ivy
Hmm.
comic series that has Harley in it. I know she's also watched the Harley Quinn animated series that was on Max.
Hmm.
I think it's actually like R rated, so it's like a little more risque.
I remember
But
seeing that. It looked good.
it's generally good, and I think the art style also matches up with a lot of the like '90s Batman animated series too. So that's good to see.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the comics. I didn't read much about the show, but I know the reason they turned it into a show because the comics were getting really popular and were pretty well acclaimed. So that's cool. I'll have to look into that. And then she also mentioned the Barbie movie, which I did not see, and I don't really have any interest in seeing it, to be honest. At one point, I think I did. I just thought it could be like funny, like the Lego movie, but I have heard it's good and stuff. I just, you know, of all the
Mm.
things, all the content that's out there, it's hard
It's
to
weird
latch
because like I
onto it.
kind of feel the same way about the Barbie movie as I do the Sonic movies, where it's like,
Mm.
I mean, obviously I'm not a big Barbie fan or anything, but like the movie was enjoyable.
Hmm.
I got to call out one other really great adaptation I just thought of. Sandman on Netflix is to me is profoundly good
Yeah,
and
it was
so
good.
close to the comics and has and that's one of my favorite stories like ever is this the end writing is like the Sandman
Are we gonna get
series.
more of that?
Yeah, they announced season two.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. And from every sometimes Netflix and well, really a lot of these shows adapted from like graphic novels and stuff. The first seasons are awesome, like American Gods. I felt the same way. And the second season, you're like, oh, okay, so you just decided to start writing an entirely new story that never happened in the comics, and you could feel it. And it's like, well, that's fine, do that, but to go do that as a spin-off or something. Don't like totally change the trajectory of the series. So anyway, hopefully, I guess my point is that um they keep they made some good changes that work for the show, but overall, like beat for beat, most of the time it's what happened in the comics, and they did it so well. And it's pretty incredible that they did it well too, because it could have been that super cheesy anime problem that we see all the time, but somehow they avoided that.
Yeah.
Um,
And another one along the same vein, even though it was adapted from a comic and a sitcom in the '90s, but Netflix's adaptation of Sabrina was really good as well.
oh yeah, yeah. I didn't see that, but it
Hmm.
looks cool.
It doesn't go as like far into the occult and stuff as what Sandman does, but like it feels like a middle ground between like that really dark stuff to like CW type shows that
Mhm.
I think it was done really well.
One I just
Hey
thought
guys, do you
of.
mind if we take a? I'm sorry, I gotta pee.
Oh,
Oh,
you're
I'm
go
gonna
good.
be
ahead.
rude. I'm about to explode, so I'm gonna step away for like 5 minutes, and then we can
Yeah.
get into the like concluding topic. I'm sorry, Barrett. I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. Um, I'll talk to you about it. I don't know if Nick. I feel like Nick probably. I don't know if he would have watched it or whatever. But the Goosebumps show that was on Disney Plus. I we put it on not having any sort of like expectation for it at all and being like, I don't know, this probably isn't. There's no way this can be good in 2023 or whenever it was. And it surprised me. I actually really liked it, and it made me think of the show that I watched growing up
Yeah.
that like was adapted straight from the books and R.L. Stein was like actually involved with, and it had like shot for shot things in it that like just were direct call outs to that show like if you were familiar with it and obviously the books, but like I don't know that it actually surprised me, and I love seeing I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy that's in
Justin
Jeepers
Long.
Creepers and yes, Justin Long,
It's like
dude, it was
he's
so
always
good.
the no matter what movie he's in, he's always the victim of something.
And he's always the victim of some bullshit, and it was just another one of those that was just perfect, and I loved him in that role. And I think they just released a trailer for a new either a movie or another show series. I don't know what it is, but it's got Ross from Friends is in that role where
Nice.
like,
Yeah,
and it's a stay out of the basement.
I'm sure that'll be good.
Yeah,
He should
it
fit
looked
into
the
that.
trailer looked fun. Um, especially if I don't know how they're approaching it, whether it's a series or a movie, but either or, I don't know. I'm confident that it'll at least be entertaining.
Yeah, I really loved that first season of Goosebumps. I
Mm.
grew up watching the original TV series as well, reading the books. Um, I think the
Kanan and I put that on to right after we watched the trailer for uh Stay Out of the Basement. I
yeah,
just put that episode on YouTube and we watched through it, and it was so much more cringy than I ever remember, but
there's like
still just like a blast from the past. It was crazy.
there's like an endearing part of that being like low budget and just kind of cheesy writing and stuff, where
Terrible writing.
the new show didn't really have that. So it's like even though they're adapting some of the same stories across those, like it's kind of nice to see them like take different routes with it in the sense of like the
Hmm.
tone and everything. I really loved the Netflix series, and we just kind of initially jumped into it because uh, our son was into it, and like because he's been real big on the movies that I think Jack Black was in,
Jack Black.
and they weren't bad, but they're not something I would
I
like.
see. That's what confused me about even being interested in it, because I would when those trailers for those were coming out, I had no interest in watching
Yeah,
them, and still haven't seen them. And I don't know what made me think that the show was going to be any better.
yeah,
Um, but also maybe it was because I love Jack Black to death, but I mean he's in too many things for me to.
yeah.
It distracts me from what's actually going on.
I mean,
Um,
part of it's just kind of like tempering expectations. Where like, yeah, with it being a movie like that, you would expect it to be a big blockbuster or something, and that's where I say the movies weren't bad, but I mean, it would have probably been better served as like a movie for Netflix or something. And that's where, like, tempering expectations with the show, I wasn't expecting a whole lot, and it ended up being really good.
Mm-hmm. We're
Bumps.
talking about Goosebumps, yeah.
I haven't checked that out,
See, we knew you wouldn't
but I've
care.
heard
Oh,
it's
I'm
good.
just kidding.
yeah, see, I already was like, I doubt Nick's into this one. But the Disney Plus
Yeah.
show that was out was what I was like kind of calling out as just being a good adaptation towards everything that came before it, being the show and the books as a kid. Like
Hmm.
both of those old like 90s, you know. I just thought like it surprisingly put that together well and had a I don't know. I went into it not having any expectations, came out of it being like, holy shit, that was actually pretty fucking good.
And I've heard it's good, especially if you're into the stuff. But yeah, it's not on my not
Mhm.
really on my radar. But I won't say much more about that. But anyway, all right. So final part of this topic, or concluding topic for this topic, is like the dream adaptations, right? Like, what are some you want to see? How specific? Are share the specifics of what you want to see and what that looks like and stuff like that. I can go first, but you guys are welcome to. I know Brandon, I feel like you've thought about this a lot.
Well, this was my original, like, spark of the idea for this conversation was, I've talked quite a bit across their various podcasts in the sense of how much I love uh, Shredder's Revenge, and uh, like how much of that was like a spiritual successor to Turtles in Time. And around that same time that Turtles in Time came out, there was a Power Rangers Super Nintendo game that came out as well, that were like side-scrolling beat 'em ups. And ever since Shredder's Revenge came out, like my one wish for that was that they would kind of do the same thing with the Power Rangers game, and create like some kind of spiritual successor for it. And it didn't take long. I kind of got my wishes granted on that game comes out next month. So that led me to like thinking, like, what's next? Like, what other? I've really gotten into a few of the beat 'em up type games like that lately, and like I think the one that I want to see next, or I want to see most, is like somehow adapting Dragon Ball to that. Mainly because, like, so with those games, or at least with Shredder's Revenge, anyways, there's a you can choose between the four turtles, Shredder and April. They've all got their own specific moves and specific special moves. So I'm just thinking of like how that would work with Dragon Ball, and like the small roster of characters that you would have to be able to choose from. Like, there's enough popular villains in the show that like you'd be able to have a level for each one. Um, so that's like what initially sparked this idea for a conversation.
That'd be cool. That would be something different. As far as a Dragon Ball Z game, I would actually, I think I'd really enjoy that.
Yeah, there were
Um,
there were a few of them on Game Boy and Game Boy Advance that kind of fit the similar tone
mm,
as what I'm wanting, but it was just one of those, like, good
no, it's
idea,
like a
but
side scroller,
yeah, it's like a
what is it, Double Dragon kind of
yeah, like
idea, where you're just, walking through the streets of familiar places and
yep.
beating up uh, Red Ribbon Army and all kinds. That'd be awesome, dude.
Like I said, there were a few games similar on Game Boy Advance. That it was more of one of those situations where it's like good idea but bad execution.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I would
But
like.
now that could look so good. Like that could be such a flashy, good-looking game with what we have
Yeah,
now. And um, I I want a BioShock show. I was
Well, that's what
I want
I had on my mind.
I want that so bad. I keep getting tricked by fan art and random places posting that something's in the works at Netflix or whatever, and it's happening at this point. And I've had friends tag me in things that are not trustful sources, but
Get
I want it so bad. And I think that is something I think like Fallout, that people that didn't even like Fallout were loving that show and it got them interested in the thing. And I think that that would be something that would do so well to, you know, shed light on an incredible series of games with an awesome atmosphere and like really thought out storytelling. Like, I just feel like it needs to happen. But I'm also by putting that on the docket, it's also like I don't know, whoever did Fallout, like, and actually had the heart and time to think through all the different like things that just made that show so special. I would love for them to like also work on BioShock. Like play something that's not we're not doing this and changing it to make our own thing. Like, we're doing this and it can be a new story, new characters, whatever, but like, I don't know, just making it as faithful as possible without, I don't know, Halo in it. Um but other than that, like, the one I was thinking of earlier was for Halo, if we can just forget that that show happened, and they did The Fall of Reach as a short series and actually show like the upbringing of Chief, and the moment he gets the augmentation and puts on a helmet, don't let him take it off. Like, we don't need to see adult Chief. We can see kid Chief up to a certain point and kind of like maybe like collage that together to where like we kind of fast track him to adult Chief, but at that point like show him and his team working together and learning how to use their augmentations and learning like about the Covenant and how to take down a Phantom for the first time, and like show that progress like up to the like badass Chief that we know from Combat Evolved and so on. I just think a really cool, that's what I wanted out of a Halo show, was them to like really go into like, because The Fall of Reach is one of my favorite books, and it just did such a good job at telling um like where Chief, like how John was discovered up to the point to where, in his progress up to becoming a Spartan, and like how him and his team learned to like grew up together and work together. I don't know, just the camaraderie to it. I just think it could be a really cool idea, and think it would be such a better idea for a Halo show rather than like an adaptation that's like with new ideas. I don't know. Something that's been, I don't know. I think that's what the people want, because that's what I want.
I
That's
mean
what I want so bad.
that's why I mentioned that I thought that like the story for even ODST or Reach would have been a better show
Yeah.
than
It doesn't even have to, yeah, it doesn't have to involve Master Chief. It could just be in the universe. And yeah, because those games had great stories and didn't have anything to do with Master Chief. But I don't know. If we're if we were going the Master Chief route, I would love a true The Fall of Reach adaptation, because the game Halo Reach was a tease for that and didn't give that, which is fine because it was great on its own. And then the show was a huge letdown. So I don't know. I just think that would be a good opportunity to repair.
so I've got a couple questions regarding yours. Do you with Halo being at the forefront, I don't know if you saw it, but a few months ago I shared something on our Facebook page that was like a proof of concept for a game that was being worked on, and it was a with all the Lego games and everything, with Halo, their right like Mega Blocks has their rights for making toys and stuff like that. And there was I don't know if it was like maybe 10 years ago or so, but there was like a proof of concept made that was like a Lego type game, but it was with the Mega Blocks in the Halo franchise, and it was like, um, obviously with like all the graphics and everything look similar to the Lego games, but it took Halo and made it into more of like a third person shooter. And I just thought that was really cool and would have liked to have seen them go forward with that.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't seen that, but that does sound really cool.
Yeah, I'll have to share it with you again.
Mm-hmm.
The the other question I had was regarding Bioshock. Do you think that would specifically work better as a TV show than a movie, or?
Yeah, I prefer the opportunity for a good arc that multi-episode shows have. Like 8 seems a little bit too short, but between 8 and 12 episodes of like a series, if it does well, they can leave things open to interpretation, but do not definitively leave it off on a cliffhanger that requires something else. I think that would just benefit from like a compact 8 to 12 episode show that it has to build that kind of curiosity and like wonder of where is this going, but you're infatuated with everything, all your surroundings the whole way through it. I mean, a movie could be good. I just find that with something like that that's so broad, I think that there's more opportunities in a show. You could introduce different things every episode. Like we could have like a focus on splicers and big daddies and big sisters or what, whatever. Like they could the little sisters and concepts, they could focus more on things gradually through it. That I don't know. I think I imagine it as a series better than a movie, I think.
I think I thought about that too, and Bioshock was going to be one of my kind of the dream one I shared as well. I think a movie could be cool, but it would be like a speed run roller coaster through the game, and which doesn't capture all the ideas and the lore, and it could be cool just visually and just be like a weird little adventure. Cool to see like the book adapted into a show, Rapture being built and like why it's being built and the mystery behind its creation, and then getting introduced to it, right? And just seeing the awe of the city, and but then the conflicts and all that. Like they could really adapt that book really well, which is basically adapted from the audio logs of the game.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think a series would be great. I would just want it to be super expensive. Like, give it the Fallout 3 or give it the Fallout TV show budget,
But also with like less recognizable actors. Don't put Jack
Sure.
Black
Yeah.
in
Oh
the
yeah.
place of,
No.
you know what I mean? Like don't do big
Yeah,
budget actors that are in there
exactly.
because they're
Just cast
popularized
it
by
right.
other things. Yeah,
Yeah.
cast it right. Like I don't even have a dream casting for that, but just like cast someone
Yeah, me
that's not,
neither.
you're not going to look at them and immediately think of this character.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think also like sometimes when I think about adaptations, I think about like, well, man, what director or well, what other movie that was directed and how it looked and how well they did it and adapted it would be good. I think a lot about the director of the Hellboy movies would be an excellent director, Guillermo del Toro, I think. He would be an
Mm,
awesome director for BioShock. Like I feel like the kind of colors and creativity and stuff he uses, I can totally imagine him putting a Big Daddy in a movie and just making it look right. And that could be maybe a hard thing, but like you see the Hellboy movies and you go, how's this going to look? Like, and to me, those movies look great and like adapt the designs and the world and the creatures and stuff really well, especially the second Hellboy movie.
mm-hmm,
So I think something like that would be really cool. But I think there's also different directions they could go with it, where it's not necessarily all the same colors and 100% same designs as the game, but do something better, and for a live action. I mean, I'd be really resistant to that generally, but I'm just saying there could be a way to do it that is even cooler for live action that I haven't even imagined, you know?
Yeah, I think the Fallout show like really lucked up with what they've got with the directing and stuff because it's directed by Jonathan Nolan,
Hmm.
which he worked on Westworld beforehand.
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of similarities between Westworld and like the Fallout world that translated well.
Hmm.
But he was also, from what I've seen in interviews and stuff, he seems to be a fan of the games too. So
See, that is
that's a big
important.
part.
That is important with any of this, any adaptations, is having that part for the thing you're adapting. And I feel like being a more in-depth fan of the thing that you're going all out and adapting just ends up doing better for the product because you can feel it, you know. Um, I know there's a lot of examples of that, but Fallout, I mean, is a good recent one where you could tell that show had the heart of a person who was a fan of this through and through.
I
And
can't.
even where moments it slipped or was a little awkward or whatever, it didn't fall short because you can tell that it just seemed less of a cash grab, more of a someone created like the embodiment of this franchise that we've grown up with, and like this nails it. And I think it's a fine line where like being a fan, I think is just important in that. So I agree, like Guillermo del Toro with Ken Levine working together, maybe producing, you know, I think
Hmm.
that would be a cool idea for sure.
Yeah.
But
One I'll
I
throw
just
out
think
there.
the heart of the fan needs to be there.
One I'll throw out there is the director. His name's Baz Luhrmann. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
he
Yeah.
did The Great Gatsby. So like, there's already some
Yeah.
like Art Deco kind of translation there. But like,
That's a great
he
thought.
also did like the most recent Elvis movie, I think, with Austin
Yeah.
Butler in it.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I think I haven't played through all of Bioshock, but just from a visual standpoint, I think he might be able to pull that off.
Mm.
That's a great suggestion. I feel like I remember talking about that with my wife at one point, being like, "This is like BioShock." Like watching The Great Gatsby. It's like BioShock without BioShock, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense. But like the vibe, the music, the cinematography and stuff, yeah, it hits a lot of that because I think it essentially takes place at the same time. But yeah,
yeah,
Brandon, I 100% agree. I think that he could be even like the perfect director. It's just somebody would need to come in and make sure that they could help bring those horror elements to it as
yeah,
well and the action, right? And just the cool sci-fi-ness of it. But I think that with the right, with the right people on board making it, that yeah, he could be like an awesome choice for that. Then there's also like
Or
weird cat. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was think like the people that make Coraline. What if it looked like that?
See, that's cool too. Like,
I'm fine with the stop motion in the like in that kind of because that has the horror weirdness that nails the like kind of could be in that style and still be awesome. Like a BioShock series that's like animated like that, still good. Still good in my book.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think a lot of shows like adaptations of games and stuff, like Arcane to me, once again, does like a great blueprint of like, hey, you can do an animated show and it can still be dark and stuff, but still be artsy in all these different ways. I don't think it necessarily has to have the painted look, but like, I would trust the directors of Arcane with a animated Bioshock show. Like, I was like,
Mm.
they totally would nail it, like from the music and just, I mean, because they just make a really good entertainment and like really well executed, high quality stuff. So I think that's something like that would be cool to me as well. Um, you
Before we
know,
get off Bioshock, I just want to mention that cheap plug that if you're watching this before, I'm hoping to start streaming playthrough of Bioshock here in the next week or so. If you're watching this after, I hope you go back and find it like video on
yeah,
demand. Um,
Hmm.
nice.
but to tie into what you said, Nick, I think something that like I'm growing more to as I get older, and I don't know if it's just the issues with casting or just different tastes, but I wouldn't mind if like more things went animated. Like I'm getting to a point where like I prefer animation over live action to a degree.
Mhm.
And maybe that's just because of like saturation, but I just
Mm.
know like I know there's like a I know there can be like a negative connotation to it in the sense that, oh, cartoons are for kids, and that's something we grow out of when we get older. But I know over time there's more and more adult animation being created, and I'm just getting to the point where I prefer it. Like for mainly because of anime and the issues with why it's hard for adaptations of anime to be created, just because there's more artistic freedom to convey certain messages or certain emotions or just certain scenes individually. Um, and that's just like more of that I would like to see. Like I've already mentioned more Marvel anime, but even with like Star Wars, I haven't watched a lot of it, but I'm like slowly working through a lot of the Clone Wars, and I wouldn't be mad if just everything from Star Wars was in that same animation style. Like I wouldn't be opposed to even
100%.
just straight remakes of like all the movies in that animation
Yep.
style. I'd be up for.
They could do. There's so much room there to. I mean, yeah, I love the Star Wars movies so much, but it would benefit so much from animation and doing more animation. Um, I think that it just captures abilities better too, because then you don't have that like that line between like, okay, well, why can they do a bunch of jumps and flips and throws in the games and the anime or in the animation, but they don't do all that in the live action? And then I don't know, it just
And
yeah.
then
And there's a lot more they could do with like casting too, where the people could or could not reprise roles through voice acting, and I think it would still be just as good because I mean we talked about it a while back, but I still want that Luke's Jedi Academy animated show. Why don't
yeah,
we have that? Why, like, come on, bring Luke into animation and let's just let him live on that way.
I think I kind of got this way with like the shift anyways when I started feeling more about this like this was with The Walking Dead. Like I really liked the TV show. There was a lot that they changed from the comics, but I think it was for the most part pretty well received. But they got to a point on the show with like the sixth or seventh season where the actors aren't wanting to come back or they're wanting to branch out and do other things to where the TV show like in every season after that like they're so far away from the source material that it's no longer the same show. And being like there's not necessarily a problem with like branching out on stuff like that, but for The Walking Dead for me, at least reading the comics and stuff, that story was more so about Carl and like him and Judith growing up throughout the show that by the time that the actors left, it was just there wasn't enough interest in it for me. So like yeah, I think going more towards animation, like it's easier to fill those roles without, the immersion being broken. Especially when like there's so many people out there that are even able, not necessarily that you would always want this, but there's so many people out there that are skilled at impersonations that you could recast somebody and find somebody that sounds just like them if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
I think we could go down like a rabbit hole with like what the future looks like because of AI and the ability to like do a lot of this stuff and make it last forever, you know, in a certain format with the certain characteristics and stuff. But like I think that there's opportunity to see more of that stuff and it not to depend on necessarily always getting the same director, always getting the same actor or artist or whatever to keep it good. You know, it'd be interesting to see what that looks like. But like also I think something's interesting about like on the subject of animation is so I mentioned like Alita Battle Angel. You know, the thing that actually stood out most to me in that movie was I was like, the CGI characters are so detailed and have this kind of animated look to them, right? I said, the problem now is the people that are in it. I'm like, they almost need a pass over every live action element to just give it that higher resolution, like bigger eyes or more exaggerated features, so that it all looks like it's part of the same thing, right? And it almost looks like it is an animated movie purely, even though you've got these real actors on set and stuff like that. Because I was like, well, her skin looks more detailed than the real human over there. Like, why is that? And it's because like they freaking went in there and drew every hair follicle and made it like as high resolution as possible. And the lighting is just perfect. But then you have the humans and they've got real light on them, right? Which isn't perfect in the same way that it looks on the CGI, right? So it's like, man, it makes sense to like do a hybrid of it, but like, what are these real people doing here? Like, make them, I don't know, make them exaggerated in the same way. I know that's expensive and time consuming, but I guess the point for me is that like animation, just going, oh, let's just make it animated.
Mm.
Sometimes that's photorealistic, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it looks like a Pixar movie. It's like, yeah, it's fine, but like you're right. I think you guys are right. When it comes to adaptations, there's just you also avoid that, I guess, sense of a live action movie pretending to act like a cartoon, which makes it feel ridiculous. Even if it's animated and it's really realistic looking, but it lets you go back to like some of these scenes that just seem so stupid when they're adapted and you just have real people saying these lines, or real people wear the wigs. Somebody mentioned the wigs earlier. That is like one of the worst things with any of these adaptations, where just like, what is looks like a Halloween costume, right? Like, and we don't have to go in depth on the Borderlands movie, but like, it just looked, they
I
just looked like
forgot
what
about
they were
that.
they were just wearing cosplay, like it's some of these stuff.
Well, part of
Where
that
Did you watch
animation,
it?
I
no.
haven't.
No.
Part
Okay.
part of
I
that
haven't either.
part of the problem with that adaptation though was that the art design was like so much of the identity that like
Hmm.
how do you make that live action? And then they didn't even try to really adapt the art style at all.
But an animated show though
Yeah,
could have been sick.
like I
Yes,
don't know if you guys watched it,
absolutely.
but like there's a cyberpunk anime that like
Yeah, oh,
they
dude,
could easily do
it was really
a
good.
Borderlands anime just like that, or in the same
Hmm.
vein, and I think it would work.
Yeah, they could make the
Yeah.
bad guys funny, like every time you'd meet a new bad guy, and then have a ridiculous name. Like they could do that like introduction thing, like where it just I don't know. I could see it as
Mm,
an animated
yeah,
show so much
me
better than
too.
like, and it embodied the what was Borderlands, where it's the style and the comedy of it with the ridiculous amount of guns that you can have. They could do that in an animated show and pull it off. I think that like I don't know, animation is a safer place for adaptations like that. As far as like if it comes from something that's best viewed in a cartoony kind of way and less like photorealism, like it being like live action, the necessity for a live action version.
Yeah.
There's a line.
So I know we gotta wrap up here in a few minutes, but one last thing I wanted to mention was I think we touched on part of it earlier with like the Mario movie and where they're going to next. And it seems that the next property that I don't know if it's the same studio, but at least the next property that Nintendo's allowed to work on is a Legend of Zelda movie. And I'm just curious what you guys want out of that, especially with, you know, for the majority, I think, 95% of the games at least. I know there was an animated show back in like the 80s or 90s that wasn't really good. But I'm just curious
What do you mean?
with a series that has a silent protagonist, like how do you want that adapted? And then like in what form? Like in the sense of like an animation style similar to Mario or something different. Like personally for me, I keep seeing like a lot of like AI images on Facebook and stuff, and the one that comes up the most is like various different properties in like Studio Ghibli animation style, and I think that's what I would want to see is that like Legend of Zelda as a Ghibli property.
You read my mind. Like that was going to be one of the last things I said too was if they just had Studio Ghibli do Legend of Zelda movie, like, and they also had the same composer who does the Ghibli movies work with Nintendo on redoing those themes, but in that Studio Ghibli way, which is a lot of what we saw in Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the Wild, they intentionally went Studio Ghibli direction. I don't know if you guys have read some of the interviews with that, but I mean it's obvious, but anyway, I think just a straight up Studio Ghibli Zelda to me would be the coolest thing. What I hope for with the movie, and they've described it. I know they have a director, and I want to say it's the director who did oh god, the Maze Runner movies. I think that's the director they got for the Zelda movie, and he's apparently a big fan, so I'm really hopeful about it. He's a big fan of the series, so I'm hopeful about it. But I think he described it as wanting to do like a live action Studio Ghibli Zelda movie. So hopefully it's exactly that. I think the only thing is like by the time they're done trying to get the hair to look right and stuff, I feel like I'm just gonna wish the whole thing had been animated. That's the main thing with the look. As far as the perspective goes, I don't think it should follow Link. Like, and I don't know how you really do that with a movie, but it should maybe be from the viewpoint of someone who's with Link. I mean, it could be the fairy for all I know, and Link's doing all these things. I don't know. I'm not saying have Navi say hey over and over again, by the way. I'm talking about like having an actual like character who's accompanying him and capturing the legend as it's happening, and it's kind of from their viewpoints, but still very much has Link and Zelda and Ganon and stuff as a character. That's the direction you said, Nick. Tell a good story with it. I would probably try to go that way.
I do think that if they did it right though, like if they utilized Navi right, like that could definitely be like the next Baby Yoda kind of thing.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Barrett, what are you thinking?
I am discouraged hearing that it's most likely going to be live action because I think an animated show that's aware of itself, that or an animated movie even that's aware of itself and similar to how the Mario movie was, that like really captures the pure nostalgia of every corner of Mario. I think they could do something just as fun with Zelda and connect the Zelda multiverse in a way and switch between the different versions of Link and maybe bring them all together and I don't know, do something fun like that.
Yeah.
I think I would like something more like that. That's like we've got Toon Link with like Ocarina of Time Link with I feel like there's a lot of more opportunity for that to be successful there rather than come out and be cringy, because I don't know how to do a silent protagonist in live action and at work, but I think in animation it could be pulled off well. But also, like, Mario is just as, I mean, maybe a little bit more verbal than Link as a protagonist, but because Link does have a voice whenever he's swinging his sword and stuff. But like, so going from that, maybe they could get the actor that played the voice of the guy from Shadow of the Colossus.
That'd
If
be
he still
good.
sounds, because that's Link to me. That sounds more like Link.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but
Yeah, that'd be
I
good.
think they could give Link a voice and it still be good. Just like they gave,
Yeah.
like I was very hesitant about Mario and Chris Pratt sounding good as Mario, but I think they pulled that off very well.
Mm-hmm.
And that surprises me. So I'm ready to be. I would be ready to be surprised with a Link or Legend of Zelda thing in the same vein. but I would like to see it be aware of itself and embrace the silliness and give it a really good hero's tale story. And but if it's going to be a live action thing, then I mean, I'm going to be like side eyeing it. I don't know. I don't know
The
about that.
the one
Maybe.
thing I keep seeing is I don't even want to say I don't even want to say they're like fan casting, because it's more so just like the skeptic or the like the cynicism in the way like Chris Pratt's been cast and everything. The one thing I keep seeing is that Tom Holland is like the fan cast for Zelda or for Link, and I don't
Be
think it would
fun.
be bad, but I would rather see somebody else.
I think a bunch of unknowns personally, I think is
Spoilers.
the way I'd go. Because
You're
here's the thing, I
adapting.
think there doesn't have to be much dialogue in the game or in the in the movie. Like you can still have, I'm not saying like don't put dialogue in it, but like have Link talk, I agree, but have him be a man of few words. To me it's important that he sounds gentle, strong, and focused at the same time. And really I don't need to know how he feels about like the weather necessarily, because like Link to me is like very focused on right and wrong, and that's like the kind of the extent of it and everything. And otherwise he's just a pretty simple guy, like
Mm.
he's just happy when things are going fine, and he just wants to spend time with Princess Zelda, and or something, or just sleep in, like that Ocarina of Time version. But like, just I think it's most important that just capture a sense of like that he's got a sense of justice and righteousness, and obviously courage, right? um but yeah, I agree, make him talk. But as far as the casting goes, I'd be happiest if no one I recognized was in it, or if they're in it I don't recognize them, you know um
Mm.
that's my personal
Yeah, Jack Black's going to play
opinion.
Ganon.
He could, he actually could, but I don't want to recognize his voice, and I don't want to see Jack Black. I want to see big
The
CGI
problem with
Ganon or
like
something.
I'm one of Jack Black's biggest fans, but one of the problems is when
I love him too. Don't get
when
me
you're
wrong. No
casting like
shade.
well, it's like when you're casting like that, you've got to cast for the sake of like the person fitting the character, not just casting
Yeah.
because we need somebody popular. And like
Hmm.
See, yeah.
the difference between like Mario and Borderlands and now Minecraft, like you can see the difference where it's like um, with Mario and Jack Black being Bowser, like they allowed him to do it in his own way, but like still
Mm.
be Bowser, and it became like one of the like it kind of stole the show to an extent.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Whereas you see the trailer for Minecraft and it's like, oh, we just wanted Jack Black, like it, it's like it's like how do you make that movie and like that because like Minecraft's another one where it's like there is an art design to this that's like a lot of the identity of the show, but we're just going to throw, you know, 60-year-old live action Jack Black in there as Steve. Okay, this makes no sense.
Aquaman. Yeah.
And even to the point where like I haven't seen Borderlands, but like the scenes I have seen, Jack Black probably was the only good part being Claptrap. But you just when it comes to stuff like that, you've got to like obviously they're going to go for even if like this Zelda show has a cast of unknowns, there's probably going to be at least one or two that they throw in there just for the sake
Chris
of
Pratt.
trying to get people invested.
Hmm. This is a part of the last one succeeding, so we'll do it again.
I mean, there's definitely actors that they can pick that, if they need him for star power, that could do a great job. My first choice would be forget the actors. Like just get the, do, like you said, do an animated or even if it's hybrid animated, I don't know, like the Detective Pikachu or something. I think there's a way in which that could work. But yeah, I think the casting is probably my biggest concern. I mean, that, and then like just kind of capturing some of the stuff that is important about the games, like um I mean, the puzzles, right? Like they gotta make sure they're showing Link solving a dungeon, and I don't mean like literally like the levels, but like, you know, have a really cool complicated scene where it looks like that that droid factory scene from like freaking Attack of the Clones or something, right? And Link's trying to like navigate that, like that needs to be represented in some way, I think, and for that to be really cool and show his resourcefulness is really what it's about. And like I think there's a really, and you got to have to do all that within like a 10 minutes, right? Like, or at least a fraction of the movie. These scenes are gonna have to show him doing that. And but the combat they could go like almost any direction with as long as he's got the master sword and shield at some point, you know. Um, but I don't know. I think a Zelda movie to me is kind of the same as an Elden Ring movie. It just needs to be like a really slow, almost montage of like these key points that are visually awesome that sum up like really key stuff. But a lot of it is just like it's almost like the way that they did like 300 or something, right? It's a lot about these like you could film half the movie in slow motion for all I care, right? It's more about me seeing the Deku tree waking up like, you know, in live action with Link walking up to him, you know, and just building that scene. I don't need them to have like 7 minutes of dialogue. It can just be, you know, watching the Deku tree kind of like shake it off like the Ents in Lord of the Rings, right? Like just show me that. That's what I want to see. And then have them talk and say a couple lines that are in the ancient Hylian, but then they have to translate it and you know, and then show me Link's reactions, like the wonder and terror of it, and just all the detail that you can accomplish with the movie like that. That's the kind of scenes I want. They don't got to do this complicated thing about Ganon's origin story or something like that. But you know, that's just what I want. That'd be my dream of how they do that.
As I guess as our final thing before we sign off, like who would be an actor that you do know that you would cast as Link? Like I'll start off, but like I think he might be a little old for it, but like Tom Sturridge that's in Sandman, I think he would be good as Link. Because I do think with like the way Link looks and like kind of similar to Barrett's apprehension of character creation in Dragon Age, I think they are going to have to like go with somebody that's a little more androgynous looking. Just I mean maybe just from like the age aspect of it. To the point where like I wouldn't be surprised if they went with like someone that identifies as non-binary or female, like what's her name? I can't remember the actress's name, but the person that plays Sin in Arrow, or Cindy, I think that was her name.
I don't remember.
It's yeah, I can't remember their name, but who would you cast?
I'm probably gonna cop out of this answer and just be like Elijah Wood 20 years ago.
Hey, that was not a bad answer.
No, they need to do it as him now. Just like not even like not even mention like the
I mean,
age.
he's hardly aged. He's hardly aged. It wouldn't be hard to like, you know, do some movie magic on him, but I would be fine with Elijah Wood in that role just because like the almost similarity between Lord of the Rings and Legend of Zelda as far as like just high fantasy type shit.
Yeah.
I think he could be he'd be a good looking Link.
This might be a controversial pick.
Henry
Hunter
Cavill.
Schafer.
Oh, that wouldn't be bad either, honestly.
So,
she was in Euphoria. I'm not sure what else.
Now, I'm not going to get into it, but are you familiar with, as a personal life, as an actor, like we're talking about androgynous kind of features, perhaps, and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, are you familiar with that? So I think that's another reason it's kind of perfect to cast her as Link as a decidedly male character, right? But I think that's for me, I think Link works if he's got kind of a feminine, angelic, or whatever look. And I mean, I guess for lack of a for lack of a better word, kind of being beautiful, right? Like kind of like the like Brandon or Bear, like you were saying, trying to make a masculine elf in Dragon Age is like extremely challenging, right? I'm sorry, I'm not throwing you on the spot, but what I'm trying to, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that that works for Link. You know what I mean? Being
Yeah,
essentially an elf
sure.
and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, that'd be my pick. What about you, Brandon?
I mentioned mine already.
Wait, who'd you say?
I said Tom Sturridge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Then also, I think her name was Bex Taylor Klaus. She was in Arrow, and she was in a few other things.
I mean, this is one of those actors that's huge, but still over Tom Holland, I could see Timothy Chalamet at least looking like a good Link.
Yeah.
I
I
think
was
that
thinking of him too.
more pointy features makes him, I don't know, he looks more like a Link to me. If I had to choose between the two of the top young male actors in Hollywood right now, I'd probably pick him.
What's funny is
I think he could play a good Zelda.
He could do both.
That's well, I was actually
could do both.
I was going to say that because
He could each play. That would be even better. We got Link and Zelda.
I've watched a lot of like
someday.
late night
Yes.
appearances by both of them, and I guess because of the connection of like Zendaya being in Dune and her dating Tom Holland, like there seems to be a camaraderie between the two, to where like one of them being Link and one of them be Zelda would be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah,
Dude,
that'd be great.
I'd be okay with that. Yeah.
Or one of them is Link and one of them is Shadow Link, and then she is Zelda.
That's brilliant. I think they should have one actor play everybody. I think Jack Black should just play everyone, or Chris Pratt. I swear to God, though, if it's Chris Pratt, I will have bias going into. I mean, the chances of that are ridiculous, but like,
could see him being Ganon.
Come on.
Once you see, once y'all watch here in a couple weeks when Deadpool versus Wolverine comes to Disney Plus and y'all watch it, you could see that Ryan Reynolds could play everybody.
Okay. We'll do that. Well, guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was fun.
Sorry. Yeah, I know we're at the point. This was a fun conversation. It got more fun as we had it too, I think, and stuff.
That,
so.
like, I was not prepared. I didn't really prepare myself too much for it, but was like, yeah, I didn't feel like I even needed to once we started going, because I don't know. Been a lot of really good and really bad adaptations, and it was fun to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we covered them in good measure too. I don't think we went down the too much down either route.
Yeah.
But cool. Well, guys, chat, thanks for being here. If you're watching this as a recording or whatever, thank you so much. I hope you liked the video. I think we're probably going to break this into 1 or 2 parts. But yeah, comment with your thoughts, and definitely follow us if you like the content, and subscribe. Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you guys.
See you.